Hello, and welcome to the first Houston Aphasia Recovery Center virtual Let's Talk Luncheon. I am Emily Connor Hempel, HARC's Board Chairman. We are most grateful for your generous support, especially in these uncertain times. HARC depends on your support to fund our programs and services for people with aphasia. As you may know, aphasia is difficulty with communication, speaking or understanding words as a result of a stroke or brain injury. As HARC celebrates our 11th anniversary, I hope you will continue to be a friend and help so many here in Houston live successfully with aphasia. We have all had to take time to pivot this year. I am so proud of this resilient community touched by aphasia and our staff who worked so diligently to ensure HARC did not close our doors completely. The amazing HARC staff didn't skip a beat to reimagine a virtual world where no one is left silent. This year, we have realized how incredibly important these programs are for our participants. With the isolation, lack of ability to get out and socialize, our programs have been a way for our participants to interact. HARC continues to serve the over 43,000 Houstonians living with aphasia weekly through Zoom, home visits, and little touches each day. We truly couldn't do it without friends like you. Now it is my great honor to introduce our luncheon chairs, Margie and Bubba Dorrance. They have worked with tremendous grace and generosity to ensure this event's success. Thank you, Margie and Bubba.
Emily, about 4.5 years ago, I had never even heard the word aphasia. I was driving to my office and I was caught at a red light. So I decided to call Bubba. He answered the phone, but I couldn't understand him. And of course I said, "Are you okay?" And he managed to say no. I headed home immediately. Bubba had had a stroke. But 2 miracles had happened that day. I called and he answered. That's where our journey with aphasia began. HARC is help. HARC is hope. We need HARC. We love HARC. It's made an incredible difference in our lives, knowing there is a place where Bubba and others like him can grow and can be lifted up. But now, before we take a peek at HARC in action, I want to say thank you to our host committee, the advisory boards, the board of directors, the luncheon committee, and the incredible HARC staff for their help in making this virtual luncheon a reality. A special thank you also to Rita Justice and Jenny Jackson, our Let's Talk Luncheon Chairs 2020. Bubba, now let's introduce our friends at HARC. Let's meet Cheryl.
Just another day for Cheryl and her mother, Louise. Cheryl, brilliant and at one time a master-level social worker, had a stroke at 39. Today, Cheryl cannot speak, but is still brilliant. Living with a condition called aphasia, she enjoys a fulfilling life. But it wasn't always this way.
Cheryl realized that England was looking for social workers with their masters. And so she went to London in 2005. She had gotten off the phone with her boyfriend. He did come down that evening, thank God, because after Cheryl had hung up from him, she passed out on the floor with the stroke, a massive stroke. And she laid there for about 17 hours. I brought Cheryl from London and brought her back to Las Vegas. I think about what I was told when I was in Vegas, that Cheryl would never be able to recognize a number, that she really suggested I just put her in a home. It was very hard because I couldn't get care for her. I was always searching, trying to find what am I going to do. Cheryl was in a depression. She lost her friends. Everybody was afraid, well, what do I say to her? And even her dad. What do I say? How do I get my point across? How do I make her understand what's going on? She lost all of that. The University of Houston was having a stroke research program. And Dr. Meir was in charge of the speech center at University of Houston. And that program ended up becoming HARC.
When someone has aphasia, the challenges they face day in and day out can be devastating. And what is critical for the recovery from aphasia is that they be in an environment that supports their efforts to communicate and build that confidence and regain that sense of self.
Now Cheryl is regaining her confidence and sense of worth through the friends and community she has found at HARC, Houston Aphasia Recovery Center. But Cheryl is not alone in other ways, too. There are 2.5 million people in the U.S. with aphasia who have lost, in varying degrees, their ability to understand or express speech due to brain trauma from strokes, injuries, and more. There are 43,000 in Houston alone. HARC is helping as many as it can to live fully functional lives. They are participating in art, music, book clubs, and most importantly, socially interacting.
And I think we see the evidence of that empowerment in someone like Cheryl, where she, when we first met Cheryl, was very reticent to initiate or engage in a conversation or participate in a conversation. It's clear that she understood what it is we were talking about, but she was reticent. And now when you see Cheryl, she's like a different person. So she welcomes people as they come to HARC. She has them sign in. She has a role to play. And she gets to, throughout the day there, engage in an enriched environment.
She has just improved daily. A lot of things she loves. She loves painting. She loves the book club. She loves the art class. And she loves the music. So she just enjoyed going and doing. HARC has given her confidence. And it is the best program, period.
One of the leading centers for aphasia research, HARC is, first and foremost, a people place. Cheryl knows that as well as anyone.
So it's critical that we find ways for that person to regain as much of their self as possible, to that adjustment to their challenges, but also in spite of their challenges, staying in touch with who they are and what's important to them, whether it's their church or their social clubs or whatever. It's critical that they be able to regain who they are, because they haven't changed. Aphasia hasn't taken away who they are. It's just made it more challenging for them to express themselves.
That support and love is the core of what makes HARC special. And in turn, HARC, now in its 11th year, operates through the kindness of others. It is reliant upon the generosity of those with true awareness, individuals who understand the importance of assisting others who yearn to be relevant once again. With ongoing support, HARC will continue to grow, expanding to satellite locations throughout Houston, enabling even more people with aphasia to have their voices, in some form, heard again.
When we developed HARC, we set out to provide a place where people could come and work on their communication. The reality is there's no other place like HARC in Houston. It's the one place that people with aphasia can go and at their own pace, without fear of being discharged or cut off, work to continue to find out how they can best recover their lives in the presence of aphasia.
Cheryl was one of our original 7 participants. What an amazing journey. I'm Eleni Christou Franklin, HARC's Executive Director. While COVID has asked us to reimagine how we serve our community, it has not stopped the great need. Thank you for giving a voice to those with aphasia.
day that we first went to the hospital that evening, Randy had worked out the day before. I mean, everything was fine. Health-wise, everything was fine. And he didn't feel good. Just that evening, I don't feel good. Went to the hospital, and they said it was walking pneumonia. The next morning, after doing all the things they said to do over the night, then they said, I took him back because he said, I can't breathe at all. We went back to the emergency room. They looked at his lungs again, and they said both lungs are full, double pneumonia, and they wanted to take us to a higher level of care because actually what was happening was the heart was shutting down with cardiomyopathy. And I can remember our last conversation with his voice. He said, I love you, baby. And I said, I love you too, and I'll be right outside waiting. They went in to do an Impella to help assist the heart, and that didn't help. And at that point, he flatlined. And we are fairly sure that when they resuscitated him, that is when he, through the clot, that then created the stroke. He was in a coma the first 3 days after they resuscitated him. And in those 3 days, he had had the stroke, but it was undetected. And that's why it did the damage that it did. And then we had to go through emergency brain surgery, to remove the flap and give the room that it needed for swelling. And so we ended up being with one complication after another in the hospital 5.5 months. When we went to the first rehab hospital, that's when we heard aphasia, apraxia, all these other terms that unfortunately people are not familiar with until they have to cross that road. They're not familiar with it until it touches them or someone they know and love. 85% of the people in America don't even know what aphasia is or have never heard of it. And that being interesting because it's more common than Parkinson's and muscular dystrophy, cerebral palsy, but yet people aren't familiar with it. There's 800,000 strokes a year, and up to a third to 40% of those people are left with the aphasia and having to deal with that in some form. And no two strokes are alike, and no two forms of aphasia are alike. It's a road trip you take with no road map and no signs. And so you don't know where the end is. You don't know what, the goal is because it's evasive. And I think that's part of the aphasia. You find days that you have your little victories and they keep you going. Then there's days that you just feel totally defeated. You have to kind of sift through your soul and figure out what's important to me. Do I want to keep going forward? Is there more fight left in me? And this man has so much fight in him and so much determination. That's what made it easy for me to keep going, was just to look in his eyes and see that smile that the world knows is the Randy Travis smile. And that was my motivation, day in and day out. I can't tell you how many times in the hospital that we heard that whatever speech you're going to get back, you'll get it back in the 6 months. So after that, there's really no hope. Well, we didn't have much of a prayer then because, number one, his stroke was detected at 3 days after. So we lost the stroke reversal medication luxury. And then we're in the hospital for 6 months, 5.5. So I guess whatever speech we were going to get back, we've already done. We've already spent our time. And so that was very frustrating to know that they put a deadline on it because there is no deadline. And we're 8 years out now. In July, it'll be 8 years. And there's still every day a new word or two words put together. And those are the exciting things. But it is not 6 months. The brain doesn't have a deadline on it. And that's why I think environment and stimulation, as far as just go out and live your life, that's when things start coming back to you. You know, that's when words start showing up. Because the best therapy is living. The best therapy is getting out there and doing what you enjoy, what you used to do. You may not do it as proficiently as before, but at least you get out there and you do those things, or you surround yourself with them. Randy doesn't ride the horse like he used to, but we got on the horse a few times. He prefers not to be a horseman now, but he loves to go down to the arena and watch the people. We did that over the weekend, and just watch the people that are down there riding. And music. He loves the music. Of course, he loved playing and singing the music, and we enjoyed that out of him, and always will. But we love going now to hear other people play music, because the music is his soul. I mean, that's what he gave to the world, and now the world likes to give it back to him, if you will. So we go see people that are playing close by or wherever we're passing through. Anytime we can hear music, there's an extra skip in the heart, don't you think?
Yeah.
You can't do without that fellowship, and he loves it. I mean, if we're just going to run out to dinner, he's so excited. It was interesting too, because when we started therapy, when we were in the car, it's about 45 minutes both ways. He didn't want to hear music. Didn't want to listen to music. And that took a while. First, he let us listen to George, right? And Merle Haggard. We had a CD, and that's what he first started listening to. And it was about a year and a half later before he'd listened to him. But I think that's part of that, what we were talking about, is adjusting to the reality, to the new reality, and making it okay here. We were in 3 different rehab centers, all of them wonderful, but none of them had music therapy. And I was shocked. Why wouldn't you have it in therapy centers? Why wouldn't it just be a part of it? I mean, there should be physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, and music therapy. It should be the 4 of them. So those are one of the things that, kind of, would like more awareness of there too. When the doctor finally said, Dr. Max said, he said, you can go to a rehab, where would you like to go? My first thought was Nashville, because his band was there. A lot of his friends in music were there. It was the obvious place to go. So there was a nurse that was I think he was a music student, maybe at Belmont, but he was a nurse. Sweet, sweet boy. And he came in after hours and played his guitar and sang with Randy and put Randy's guitar in his hands. And then when we came back to Baylor, when we finally could get back to Texas, they didn't have any music. And they had somebody that came in with a keyboard. And she just came in. I mean, it was extra. It was over. It was not in their system. I was so shocked. And so she'd play the keyboard and the sounds. Then when we went to Select in Denton, and we went there for 2.5 years every single day for 4 or 5 hours. And sweet little girl, Tracy, I call her a little girl. She's, she's probably 40 now, but she looks 28, but she's just precious. And she was in their marketing department. But she was a music major at North Texas and University of North Texas. And so she would come in on her lunch hour and bring her keyboard. And she's the one that ended up starting to teach him Amazing Grace with the keyboard.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound.
I thought it was absolutely beautiful that he took that mic and all 4 verses, but that's the wonder of the brain. I mean, the brain is it's so magnificent and so incredibly complex. We don't even comprehend it. So the part that was affected, yes, that's the dictation and the proper enunciation and the thought process, but it's not the soul.
If anytime you want to come to Houston, we've got a music therapist at HARC.
Oh, good, good. You never know where we might show up. We do show up places every once in a while. They're like, whoa, there. So we would love to.
Anytime.
We would. Now I was kind of, with all of the COVID and everything last year, and that's another tentative thing. Everybody's worried about staying away from everybody, and what you're trying to do is keep these people close to people and around people. So that was a whole different kind of a challenge. But after we had to postpone this a couple of times, then when they finally said they're going to do it virtual, I was like, darn, because I wanted to go down and see it. But we will come down and see it.
You're welcome anytime.
Thank you. Thank you.
We have a group called the HARC Heralds, and they're singing 2 of your songs, and then they were so moved by your amazing grace that they tackled that also. They found your singing inspirational, and so they wanted to tackle that. So.
That's wonderful.
United in our mission to share their voice, please help me welcome our choir, the HARC Heralds, directed by music therapist Whitney and Ingrid.
Well, I heard the city singers singing about how they can love deeper than the oceans, higher than the stars above. I come from the country and I know I ain't seen it all. Heard that ocean salty and the stars they sometimes fall. And I would not do justice to the way I feel for you. So I had to sing this song about all the things I do. My love is deeper than a hollow, stronger than a river, higher than the pine trees growing tall upon the hill. My love is purer than the snowflakes that fall in late December, honest as a robin on the springtime windowsill, and longer than the strong whippoorwill. You may think that I'm talking foolish. You heard that I'm wild and I'm free. You may wonder how I can promise you now this love that I feel for you always will be. You're not just time that I'm killing. No longer. I'm no longer one of those guys. As sure as I live, this love that I give is gonna be yours until the day that I die. Oh baby, I'm gonna love you forever, forever and ever, amen. As long as old men sit and talk about the weather, as long as old women sit and talk about old men, if you wonder how long I'll be faithful, I'll be happy to tell you again. I'm gonna love you forever
We are hoping, as far as his career in music, there will probably be another album out from some of the music that he did prior to the aphasia that's not been heard. There's little tours with other people singing his music, so that was always fun. We did a few of those the year before last, before COVID, and we really enjoyed those and listening to the music. So any part of that he can play, and being out there to spread awareness for aphasia. It's very important. It affected our lives drastically, and we know that it's affecting others out there, and they're not getting heard. He gets heard maybe more so than others because he's Randy Travis, but a lot of people are not heard, and that silence is dangerous. It really hits home when you go somewhere and somebody doesn't know that he has aphasia. And they start talking to him and he doesn't talk back. And I've heard people walk away and go, well, I guess he's one of those stuck up ones. And I'm going, you don't understand. He has aphasia. And they're like, what's aphasia? So you have this whole conversation with people. It breaks my heart because you don't want them to feel bad. And I can only imagine how people must feel after they walk away thinking one thing when that's not the truth at all. So there needs to be an awareness, and it needs to be terminology that's widespread. It's, cancer is, and heart disease is, and stroke is the third leading cause of death after those two. So aphasia, when you almost have half of the people that suffer a stroke with aphasia, it should be out there. It should be a household term. You live by the faith, and you live with hope, and you never lose focus of God, because that's where you have to lean the hardest on the quiet nights. And in the hospital, the nights, when the lights were out and the nurses and everybody was gone, that quiet time, and leaning so hard on the good Lord to help me through it, help me understand it, and certainly to help him understand that there's a reason to keep moving forward.
Randy and Mary, we are incredibly grateful to you for sharing your inspirational story. The support for those with aphasia is needed now more than ever. Through the many stories you've heard today, we hope you got a sense of how vital HARC is to the community. To make a gift, please scan our QR code or visit our website, www.harctx.org. I thank you for your time, and I look forward to seeing you in person next year.